And welcome to lucky number 7 here on the Pit Lane Parlay. My name again is Mike Jokum. With me, I have my trusty co-host and comic genius, Jess Baker.
Woo woo, comic genius.
Yes, after our fun interview last week with Mr. Newgarden, I think your comic relief to the racing questions really won a lot of people over. And again, Mr. Newgarden, if you are so kind to listen to this episode here, thank you very much. It was actually only intended to be a short interview, and we ended up getting, as most of you guys know, most of the episodes. So, thank you very much for that, and I'll just leave it at that.
I can't wait for the cheese party, frankly.
Oh, yes. Speaking of the cheese party, the Twitter poll for last week was what t-shirt slogan should we go with, and Cheese Party at Joseph's did win. Unfortunately, due to some delays, the design template isn't out yet, but that should be in my email in the next couple of days, and I will post that online, and we'll make it available to any listener who wants it. And who knows, maybe we'll do some sort of giveaway for one or something like that. But getting into it, there's no major stories this week, but plenty of stuff going on. In addition to the Rolex 24 down in Daytona, IndyCar PR man Arnie put out a really great graphic, kind of just highlighting IndyCar's ties into it. And I'm not going to go into every driver that's there, that has a tie to IndyCar, because that would take 3 episodes worth of time. But just some cool facts to kind of get you guys started. The race is on right now. I think it's on Fox, and then it switches over to Fox Sports 1 or 2 at some point this evening, and switches all over the place tonight. Tune in if you can. It's a pretty cool event. I've never been there, but I hear it's awesome to go to. 25 drivers in this year's Rolex 24 have started at least one IndyCar race, and 14 drivers in this year's Rolex 24 have won at least an IndyCar race, and then 7 current drivers. And then also, in addition to that, 6 drivers entered in this year's Rolex have won an IndyCar title overall. Montoya, Bourdais, Scott Sharp, Scott Dixon, Hunter Ray, and Pagenaud back in 2016. So I'll just leave it at that. Jess, I don't know if you want to say anything about the race, but I did find it funny that there are already 2 guys taking a nap, just an hour and a half into the race. But I guess if you've had a few drinks, now's probably a good time to take a nap before the night gets started, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a fun race to go to. I've been several times. It is more fun at night to walk around and get to see the lights and the brakes and everything else. So I don't blame them for taking a nap right now. And maybe they have a long trip to get there.
Yeah, you never know. And listen, I definitely know I wouldn't make it all night there. I know plenty of people in the racing community that stay up for the entire race or close to it. I don't know if there's enough coffee in the world that could keep me up for 24 straight hours anymore. But moving on, watch the race, enjoy it. We will, talk about the winner on next week's episode when we record on Thursday evening. Jess, where do you want to start? There's a lot of little IndyCar stories out there, nothing major, but plenty to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like you said, nothing too big going on, but lots of little things. Obviously, testing was going on. I think some people were saying they had a good test, and some people were saying they, didn't really learn much, which I think is interesting. But yeah, testing over the past week, a little over a week, has been interesting for some teams, it sounds like.
What do you make of the Amazing Race part Team IndyCar, Mr. Rossi saying you don't really learn much at Sebring during testing? What do you make of that? I'll let you start it off.
It's a little, I don't know, frustrating maybe to hear, because I think with this car you should take every single minute and try to learn something from it. I mean, maybe he's meaning he doesn't learn much because they don't race there, so it doesn't translate, but I would think that they would still be able to gain some knowledge on how they want to set things up, how the car feels, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a weird comment, and I've read plenty of questions on Robin Miller's mailbag or on Twitter on why do they test at Sebring, and it's because of the wide runoff areas so that there's minimal damage if somebody happens to spin out and whatnot. But I feel like if you're racing anywhere in a car with new body work in any capacity, just racing the car, you're going to get a different feel for it than you did if you were testing at Sebring last year in the now defunct Honda and Chevy Aero kits. So I'm curious as to why he thinks that, especially when both Hunter Ray and Marco had plenty to say about the testing, and Rossi seemed to not. Maybe he was a little bit more frustrated, and that's why he said what he did. Instead of being frustrated, he kind of took the calmer approach. But it was very eye-opening that was the leading comment from the 2016 Indy 500 winner.
Yeah, I would have expected them to at least talk about how the feel of the car is a little bit different maybe, but obviously he didn't seem to really use his time well, I guess.
Yeah, and for those who aren't super familiar, I know we received a few questions on Twitter to bring it up. The new Aero kit, the new DW18, or I saw a suggestion to call it the JW18 for Justin Wilson. Maybe some combination of that, whatever you want to call it. The downforce is coming from the underside of the car, which is making the car. You have to work a little bit harder to drive the car through the corners. And as Mr. Newgarden mentioned last week, that tracks like Phoenix and maybe Iowa, you might have to do a little bit of braking in the corner, or at least lifting off the gas pedal. So it should be pretty fascinating to see how the races change, especially as we learn more. We've pretty much seen every driver come out and say, the car is definitely, more work to drive, but not necessarily in a negative way. Graham Rahal came out and said it was a blast. Hunter Ray said, it was a learning experience, but it was a fun one. Even rookie Matthias Lace said it almost drives, with the lower downforce level, similar to how an Indy Lights car drove, obviously with significant increase in horsepower, but the similar style. So maybe we'll get a surprise from some of these Indy Lights guys.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who can manhandle that car, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way of putting it. Continuing on the testing run, we finally got to see Zachary Clam and DeMello test for Dale Coyne, and everybody thought, well, this is it. He's going to get that second seat. And then Dale Coyne said, guys, I know I'm in the middle of serving my Sonny's barbecue, but that's not quite the case. He said we're probably going to have to run at least two drivers in that second car. I did also read that the Hawksworth potential seems to be diminishing. Maybe Lexus got a little angry at Hawksworth like they did with Sage Karam last year. Curious as to just what you think of Coyne saying he's going to have to run two drivers, especially when the guys mentioned have some pretty big sponsors on their side.
Yeah, I mean, he's from the beginning said that, quote, he wants a driver with talent and money to run in the 19 car. And I understand that. I mean, I don't think there's any question that they need somebody to fund their own ride, basically. I think that the thing that gets me, though, is running two people instead of one. It doesn't kind of help build these guys who don't have the experience up. They're not going to gain all of the track experience that just running one guy would, and maybe would be able to move up into, we'll call it seat number 1, for lack of a better word, if that seat were to open up. I just think that maybe he would be better to run just one person. That way they could get the experience of a full season.
I'm going to agree to disagree slightly here. Not completely, but I think it's, listen, it might end up being a good idea. Many teams have done that in the past where, guys have been shuffled in and out, and none of those guys went on to have long IndyCar careers. But if you have a younger guy like Clement DeMello who has, one IndyCar start, the other guy who tested this week is Emerson Fittipaldi's nephew, I believe, and Pietro Fittipaldi. Correct me if I got the relation wrong, but I personally am pretty psyched to see a Fittipaldi test in an IndyCar again. I think, getting that Fittipaldi with the Ray Hall and the Andretti might bring in some more casual fans that recognize the name from years past. And from all accounts, he had a hell of a test in his short time in the coin car. So if you have a combination of these couple young guys going throughout the year, it's going to gain them both valuable experience and expose their sponsors to the IndyCar world, and maybe one of them steps up to take that seat full time, maybe even this year, if not next year, or when another seat opens up for a retiring older driver, or maybe somebody who moves on, these guys have that valuable experience. Similar to what Spencer Pigot has been doing, but obviously not the same situation. But I think it's the right thing to do for these younger drivers and for Dale Coyne, and I'm excited by it. He's got a good team, and that car with engineer Michael Cannon is really going to have I think they're going to have a strong season. Maybe not winning, but they're at least I bet you they'll surprise some people at least a couple times.
I definitely agree with that part. I think that team has potential. I just do wish that they would stick with one driver instead of two.
Hey, that's fair. I'm excited to see what Clement DeMello can do. I thought he was mildly impressive in his start in Sonoma last year. But if removing him for a handful of races to get a Fittipaldi in there, I'll bet you this right now. And if I'm wrong, I don't know what the bet is, but we'll come up with something. I bet you that Fittipaldi may be the guy for the 500, just based on his, he's got some pretty big sponsors, and the Fittipaldi name, I bet his sponsors will pay handsomely to Dale Coyne to make sure his car is in the biggest race of the year.
Yeah, I can definitely see that happening.
So listen, I'll make this week's Twitter poll. What do you want to see Dale Coyne do with the second car? And the options will be up there, but we'll make the options one driver or a combination of the two, or would you prefer? And which would you prefer? Would you prefer Clement DeMello or Fittipaldi, who has no Indy experience? But one thing I wanted to touch on with Fittipaldi is if he doesn't get the Dale Coyne ride at all, there's seems like a solid chance that he will be in North America. He also tested Indy Lights this week. I can't remember who he tested for. So if we don't see him next year, I think 2019 shaping up to have a rookie class of Colton Herta and Pietro Fittipaldi would be one of the more impressive in name rookie classes that we've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to watching these rookies this year. It's going to be quite a test to see who Rookie of the Year is going to be.
Yeah, the rookie class is growing this year. I think it's going to continue to grow, especially with the new body kit and each team getting 2 for free. And I also read today that Indiana was giving some sort of grant to IndyCar teams, which is going to lessen the cost even further. I can't find any sort of information on what that number may be or what the grant entails. But with 4 or 5 rookies this year, at least Herta and maybe Fittipaldi next year, maybe even Santa Urita and a couple of those other Indy Lights guys that have been around for a few years. I think the future of IndyCar and the youngsters is very bright right now.
Yeah, hopefully IndyCar just markets this well into the cities where all the races are going to be at, so we start getting attendance up at the races. I know TV has been steadily growing. It's not great, but it is going up at least. So now it's actually getting butts and seats at the races.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, but IndyCar PR team and track promoters, I think, are headed down the right path. Especially this off season, I've seen a lot more from IndyCar marketing efforts than I can remember in quite some time. Even if it's just these little, hey, these are the IndyCar drivers who happen to be in the Rolex 24 this weekend. Things like that are going to bring more awareness to drivers, and the series is going to end up putting more people in the stands. The auto shows with the Indy cars there. Newgarden was at the St. Louis Auto Show and made an appearance over at Gateway. Things like that are really the perfect off-season formula to get more people in the seats. So, like you said, I hope they continue, and I think it's a good start with all the momentum they have right now.
Yep.
Moving on, what topic do you want to go with next, Jess?
Man, that's a tough question. Like you said, there's a lot of little things going on. How about, let me see here.
I have one queued up.
Go for it.
Danica Patrick. I know we've talked about her, and
you did this on purpose, didn't you?
I 100% did it on purpose. I set it up like a baseball on a tee, and I was just waiting to hit it until you were paying attention. I know Danica Patrick's name has been mentioned. This is episode 7 in over 50% of our episodes now, which is not a bad thing. I think her reuniting with GoDaddy is probably the best thing she could have hoped for in terms of helping her get a ride. As we saw, she got a Daytona ride at the last minute, and I'm sure it's only a matter of days before an Indy ride is announced. But touching on her before I touch on the announcement that was supposed to happen this week that didn't, Sebastian Bourdais said, "I don't think Danica will struggle because her roots are in open wheel racing." I think I'm going to agree with him, because she didn't race the AeroKit era, she raced the pre-AeroKit era, so she might be able to handle a car with a little bit less downforce. And one of the biggest things is fitness, and we know Danica is all about fitness, whether you want to know it or not. It is all over the social media world as she transitions her career into fitness guru, or whatever you want to call it. I think she might do okay. I don't know if she's going to win because of who her teammate might be, and I think they might have an interesting power struggle or an interesting dynamic, but I think she's going to end up having a decent chance.
Okay, well, I don't think that she's going to have a decent chance. Do I think she's going to struggle? Not necessarily, but you also have to keep in mind that she's not been in an open wheel car in, 10 years, 8 years, whatever it is now. So I don't know that she's going to walk right back in like she owns the place, per se. But yeah, I think she should be able to catch on fairly quickly, like you said, because she raced, the older car and was more used to the way that it handled. I think she will be okay. Now, do I think she's going to have a chance to win? Probably not. And that's just being that she's going to be with a team that isn't top echelon anymore. And she is going to have a major learning curve. And like you said, judging by the way things are going, who her teammate is going to be, I think she's going to have her work cut out for her.
Yeah, and for those who are going, what on earth are you guys talking about? There were reports last Tuesday or Wednesday evening that Brian Reinbold was set to make a two-driver Indy 500 announcement in the morning, and then it never happened. Don't know why or what happened. I think Danica with her GoDaddy funding is pretty much set there. I guess they might be waiting for some sponsorship from potential second driver of maybe Sage Karam. That's kind of my guess, and what many have said online with his ties to Brian Reinbold over the last couple years. And I kind of joked in, I think, our first episode how interesting it would be if those two were teammates. And I hate to say I told you so, but I did kind of accidentally predict this one.
Yeah, I think the reason nobody necessarily saw this coming is because everybody assumed that Danica was going to get, for lack of a better word, a better ride.
Sure.
But I kind of have to say I told you so on that one, because I kept saying, yeah, guys, I don't know, man. I don't think she's going to have this handed to her like she thinks.
I hope that her not being handed it makes her have a little chip on her shoulder and work harder. But we shall see. One interesting note, speaking of Dreyer and Reinbold, they announced that they bought a couple extra DW12 chassis this year, which to me shows, okay, definitely a two-car team for Indy. I think that's without a doubt. We are now, if we are not in bump day zone, we are one car away from being in bump day zone. I think it's probably just a Buddy Lazier announcement away, without looking at the numbers in front of me. But we definitely have to be at that point. Can you imagine if Danica is on the potential to be bumped? I think that would be pretty good for the TV ratings for qualifying. Not saying it's going to happen. Not saying it's going to happen. I don't want to predict that and say she's going to be down there. But even if it's anybody, if it's a Helio or Danica or one of these one-offs who has had a storied career in racing, could really make things interesting. It might not be a Foyt car at the back there. Sorry, we have to continue to make fun of Foyt whenever we can before they come out of nowhere and have a great year, because that's the way it seems to work. So I think that would be pretty cool, but I also think it's pretty cool because they said, listen, we might end up doing more races than just the Indy 500. And maybe this is a situation where we have Dreyer and Reinbold test the waters with this new aero kit. Let's say conservatively 3 or 4 races this year. And next year, maybe they're a full-time team, or maybe they are a 8 to 10 race type team, and a full-time team coming down the line. Especially when you consider that Steinbrenner Racing and Colton Herta might be in the show in the next year or two. It seems like every week that we go by here in the off season, there's another announcement of a team buying a chassis or a team probing the waters to enter the series, and we might seriously have I'm going to call it major bump day because it's more than 1 or 2 cars. There's probably a better term for that. We might have multiple cars at the expense of being bumped in the next couple years, which is only very good, and all credit is due to the outstanding IndyCar leadership on this one.
It makes me giddy to think about, because I remember the days when there was actual bumping, and it was so much fun and so exciting to be there. So I am keeping my fingers crossed and hoping that we will get back there very, very soon.
Yes, I think we're definitely headed down the right path, and as I said, Jay Fry and team have really hit a home run on this one. I was trying to think of a racing analogy, but I was drawing a blank. They won the race. That wasn't my best effort.
Nope.
So listen, I think IndyCar as a whole is headed down the right direction. Jay Fry spoke today or yesterday about the aero screen again a little bit, that they're going to be testing it a little bit during the day and a little bit in the evening during the Phoenix Open Test, February 9 and 10, I believe, which is free and open to the public if you can find your way to Phoenix. Definitely recommend checking it out. I will be keeping it open on my computer the entire time. But I think it's the right thing to do. Instead of saying, this is what we're going to put on the car, he's going to go, this is what we're going to try, and maybe it'll happen this year, but there are far more players in the game that have to make the decision, like Dallara, like the teams, like whoever manufactures this windscreen. Everybody has to come together and go, okay, when can we make this feasible without, bankrupting the teams or, making teams miss a test day or some practice because of some windscreen issues. So my guess is they're going to test it a couple of times this year and settle on either a design or putting it on the cars. Probably next year. I just don't see any way it can happen, mid-season. That would be quite a stretch.
Yeah, I think there's too many moving parts at this point to do it mid-season, with no testing done on it and everything else. I think they need to give it time. They need to make it right.
Yes, very well said. And a little live Rolex 24 update, even though it's not going to be live by the time you guys hear this. Mr. Helio is already making some enemies in his first season in sports car racing by bumping another car off the track going into a corner. The Penske cars look fantastic in livery design, and good on Helio for bumping wheels and not being afraid to get right in there in his first sports car race of the season. Moving on, I think it's time to talk about a Hunter Ray's comment on the testing. That minimal testing of the 2018 IndyCar is going to hurt teams like Andretti. My only issue with what Hunter Ray has to say there, and not saying that he's wrong, because, listen, these other teams that were chosen for the manufacturer testing do have the extra days, but, Michael Andretti did not have an engine deal secured by the time the manufacturers were choosing their teams. So I feel like Hunter Ray is blaming IndyCar when in reality it was his boss who kind of held up the decision there. I guarantee you, if his boss had finalized the engine deal beforehand, you would have probably seen a 4-car team like Andretti doing the testing, and maybe not Schmidt-Peterson, or maybe not both Ganassi cars.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it. I kind of feel like he's just whining, honestly, about, not getting his extra time or whatnot. When some other people who, could be a little more down because they don't have the funds and whatnot, are saying how much progress they made. That would be Foyt. Foyt was in... it's on Racer, was on Racer talking about how much progress they made and how his drivers were just workhorses, and he can't believe how much they got done in their test. So I think it's kind of all a game of perspective here. And I think that some people have the right perspective, and I think some people just want to have something to complain about, and we kind of talked about that before. Guys just wanting to complain about anything just to be complaining, and that's kind of what I feel like he's doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wanted to bring up the testing again after I ran across the Hunter Ray piece as my Twitter updates here while I have the Rolex 24 playing. I mentioned maybe a month or so ago, the one thing I was hoping for in 2018 was a little bit more maturity and focus and effort from Marco Andretti. And Marco has had nothing but positive things to say about the new car, in the fact that he said, we learned a lot and we're continuing to work hard and learn a lot more. I feel like that is the sort of attitude you need to go into this testing when you aren't one of the teams that was chosen for the manufacturer testing. And speaking of the Rolex 24, just a little update for everybody as we approach the 5 p.m. Eastern hour here. Sebastian Bourdais is first overall. Listen, the man's a beast in every car he races, so it's not shocking there. And the other Ganassi car, Scott Dixon's back in 8th. And then all the Penske guys are in the top 10 as well. So IndyCar representing very well right now, which is what you want to see in a race like this. Hopefully, it gets the guys a little bit extra publicity before the IndyCar season starts.
Heck yeah, hopefully somebody gets a watch.
Yeah, those Rolex watches are nice, and if any of those drivers are listening and happen to win, I'd gladly take a fancy Rolex watch. I'm sure you have extras. Maybe, Bourdais already won. I think Dixon won too. I'll take donations. It doesn't matter what size it is. I'm sure I can take it to a jeweler and get that fixed. But moving on to one of, I think, my favorite thing I've read this week is Sergio Marchionne, the CEO of Fiat Chrysler, saying that he's very interested in entering the Alfa Romeo brand into IndyCar, down the line. I think that would be one of the better brands to enter, over maybe a Ford, who seems to have said some negative things about IndyCar over the last X number of years. I think it's pretty cool. He said, why not? And I think that's the perfect attitude. And I think, let's look into it. Let's, he considers the CEO of Dallara to be one of his best friends and best Italian engineers around. And he's had dinner with Jay Fry. So I think right there, that's the, perfect recipe for having that third car enter into, IndyCar, especially in a pretty neat brand like Alfa Romeo with some good history in the racing world.
I'm pretty excited about this because I drive a Fiat, and so it's like the little brother of, little sister of Alfa Romeo. So I'm pretty excited about it. And like you said, it can only be good for IndyCar to bring in more. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just to refresh everybody's memory on the timing of things, if an agreement is made at some point in probably the first half of this year, it will look likely that there will be a third manufacturer for the 2020 season. And if it's the second half of this year or early into 2019, obviously 2021 and so forth. The more you get closer to next season, the further it's going to push it back by a year or so. Moving on, I think we can. One thing I did forget to mention last week in the excitement of the Newgarden interview, and that taking up most of the episode, is rest in peace to Mr. Dan Gurney, one of the best drivers of all time. Won a NASCAR race, won an IndyCar race, won an F1 race. He was the first guy to do that before a few others. So rest in peace to him. And listen, he was one of the best of all time, and will always be considered one of the best of all time.
Yeah, it's just not going to be the same at the Speedway without him.
It's definitely going to be different. I know all the Rolex 24 teams have been honoring him, and you don't get many guys like that anymore who not only race but can design cars and do some engine work, and really was kind of a the jack of all trades type of guy. And It's not often you see AJ Foyt emotional in a sad way. Obviously, he's always emotional. But listening to him talk about what a great man Dan Gurney was something I will unfortunately never forget. Not that I got to meet Gurney myself, but the stories we've read on Racer.com from Robin Miller and what forth go to show that the guy had a lasting impact on the series, even to this day. And with that, I'll leave some time here for the segment everybody has come to love, and the pit lane pitfall. Jess, I'll turn it over to you first because I think mine might take a few minutes.
Okay. Mine probably won't be all that long. We've touched on similar things before, but my pit lane pitfall this week is going to Gunther Steiner, and that's a Haas F1 team principal. And that's because he said there are no American drivers worthy of an F1 seat. Wow, has he been watching IndyCar at all? Like, does he watch racing? Does he watch racing at all? Anyways. Yeah, obviously, I do not agree with this. And obviously, a lot of people in the racing community have kind of jumped all over this, including some people from F1 even. I think that he is sadly mistaken. I think that Joseph Newgarden would easily be ready for F1. Marco, probably not.
Did you just say that just because you had to throw that in there?
No, I'm trying to think of all of them. Graham Rahal, maybe. I mean, he could get up to speed pretty quick, I think. I think he's progressed quite a bit in the past few years with maturing. So I could see him, given a little time to test, that he would be ready.
Given the right ride, I think Alex Rossi would fit right in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think he would be... I think he would be pretty dang close to ready. Just like Newgarden. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what this guy is.
Scott Dixon. Sorry, Scott. We can't forget to mention Scott Dixon. He would, even as an older guy, I think he would go in and kill it right away.
He's not American.
Oh. Well, guys, forget that I said that.
Yeah, because
can we edit that part out?
Somebody else also threw in Scott Dixon, and yeah, he's not American.
All right, how about Ryan Hunter-Reay? Yes or no?
No.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think he would translate well into that style of racing at all. And it's not really a knock on him. I think he's great in IndyCar, but I don't think that his skill set would translate to F1. And I don't think they would tolerate his attitude either. But yeah, I mean, I don't think this guy has his eyes open.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think today's episode title is going to be Scott Dixon Isn't Actually American. Make fun of myself a little bit on that one. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not perfect. In the heat of the moment, I got excited and wanted to mention Scott Dixon.
I mean, he is great. I definitely think he could do it. I'm just thinking he's not American.
Yep, that's fair. My mistake. Sorry, Scott, and sorry, Emma. I know you're both not. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just going to leave it at that before everybody goes, what the heck is he talking about? We know Scott Dixon's not American. Moving on to my pit lane pitfall. Not a direct IndyCar tie, but I'm going to tie it to it in a second. Kyle Busch, man. You're not making any friends in anything you do. But saying that NASCAR is making a mistake by only marketing the young stars and not the veterans. Come on, man. I understand, the veterans need to be marketed too because they are the guys who are, probably the championship contenders year in and year out, like Jimmy Johnson and like Kyle Busch. But the young stars are, the wave of the future and the way to bring in new fans. just like IndyCar is, marketing the heck out of Joseph Newgarden, and we have Alex Rossi and Connor Daly on Amazing Race, and Hinchcliffe, Dancing with the Stars, and all of these other sort of, younger IndyCar guys being marketed as the future. And we have not heard anybody like non-American Scott Dixon complaining about that, because they know that for IndyCar to succeed in the future, you need these younger guys to be popular. And just like in NASCAR, you need a Chase Elliott or Ryan Blaney to be popular in order for NASCAR to get back to where it was once Jimmy Johnson retires and now that Dale Earnhardt Jr. is retired. But what bothered me even more about that is NASCAR came out and said, well, Kyle, you're kind of right. I guess we should do a little bit more. If I were NASCAR, I would say, Kyle, you know what? You're getting older. We need to start promoting Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney more. You're going to continue to be promoted. You have a huge sponsor. Be happy for the success that you've had, and just continue to work hard. And pretty soon it's not going to be your time anymore. And I know that's hard for any athlete to admit, but for the better of the sport, like most of race car drivers should, be concerned with. Kyle, I'm just going to say, come on, man.
Yeah, I'm actually going to agree with you on this one. They have to be able to move forward, and I can very clearly remember when, the older guys were brand new and they were being marketed, and, nothing's necessarily changed there. It's just now somebody wants to complain about it. I think it's pretty petty of him to, kind of cry into his milk that he's not number one star. Just
Yep.
kind of get over yourself, man.
Yeah, I think, the IndyCar veterans who have really kind of taken to the we want IndyCar to succeed in the long run, no matter what, is really just, it warms my heart. Let's end the episode on a warm and fuzzy note. I think it's the perfect attitude to have, and props to Scott Dixon and Tony Kanaan and the veterans for wanting the younger guys to do well. And before I let Jess sign it off, just a couple quick announcements. Like I said, we'll have the T-shirt design posted online in the next couple days, and then our guests coming up next week. I think we are going to record on Thursday evening. Joel Willman, who's a dirt racer, is going to join us. You might not recognize Joel's name, but you will recognize Joel's great uncle, Tony Willman, who was the Indianapolis 500 Rookie of the Year back in 1934. So he's got some pretty great, IndyCar ties, and be cool to get a different outlook on IndyCar from Joel. He's a very nice guy, and looking forward to having him on. And then the week leading up to the Phoenix test, there will be no recording, but the Monday after, we'll have plenty to talk about with the Open Series test and guest Maserati Racing CEO Will Maserati. So some exciting guests coming up, and a few more to announce, probably not today, but hopefully next week or the next show after that. But looking forward to these guys. And also, can't forget to mention, Nick Berry, who we sponsored at the Chili Bowl, will be on at some point, probably in February. He's just getting ready to announce his 2018 schedule, which includes a bunch of different racing, local to me in Pennsylvania and the Northeast, but also he's trying to get out more into the Indiana area. So definitely looking forward to having Nick on, and I know Nick's already said he will be back at the Chili Bowl next year and ready to go. With that, unless there's anything else, Jess, I'll let you sign it off.
I can't think of anything, so everyone, I want you to remember to keep your lug nuts tight.